Chapter 51 Mutants at the Cross Auction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Link Town is not far from Nevada. At 10 p.m., several people entered Nevada. Logan drove the car all the way to Victor's apartment building and parked in the driveway next to it. Big city. Caliban almost leaned on the car window, looking at the high-rise buildings in Las Vegas. There are tall buildings, busy traffic, and bustling downtown. The afternoon breeze seems to smell of money, but it is this scenery that makes him feel deeply out of place. Las Vegas is still the same as I remember. Charles's pupils reflected the shadow of the poster, which showed some casino GGs. The slogan gave people the illusion that they could become billionaires after entering the casino. I'll go up to find Victor. You wait for me in the car. Don't go out. Logan was about to get out of the car after he finished speaking, but Laura on the passenger seat patted his arm, pointed to a piece of paper with hope in her eyes. On the paper was an address: Eden, North Dakota, 48.970333N, 102.155491. Looking at the address even marked with longitude and latitude, Logan nodded. He understood what Laura meant. The little girl hoped to go to the place where she could meet her friends as soon as possible. Don't worry, since I promised Gabriella, I will definitely take you there, but not now. Give me a few days. I need to see an uncle now. Logan rubbed Laura's hair and made a promise to her softly. Lola put away the paper, nodded obediently, and then continued to lie on the window, curiously looking at the bustling big city. Growing up in a laboratory, she was full of curiosity about everything around her. Logan opened the door and got out of the car, trotting all the way to Victor's apartment. The apartment was still as shabby as last time. He reached out and knocked on the door, but after waiting for a long time, no one responded. Logan couldn't help but increase his strength, and the door frame was creaking. Click, the door opened, but it was not Victor's door, but a black neighbor next door. The neighbor stuck half of his head out and said impatiently, "Why are you knocking?" "He's not home," Logan hurriedly asked. "Where did he go?" The neighbor looked annoyed. "God knows, he might have been thrown into the sea to feed the sharks." As soon as these words came out, Logan's eyes instantly turned cold. The black man was obviously panicked, and realized that Logan seemed not easy to mess with. His attitude quickly eased a little, and he hurriedly said, "He may have caused trouble. He was taken away a few days ago and has not returned until now." Logan was shocked and asked again, "Who took him away?" "Brother, you can't expect me to know everyone in Las Vegas." The black man pursed his lips, paused, and seemed to think of something, and said again, "By the way, I seem to have seen the people who took your friend away in a casino. At that time, they had a conflict and overturned a lot of dishes and chopsticks. There was a lot of noise. When I went out to check, he had been taken away. Your friend should have owed gambling debts to the casino, but so many days have passed. He may have been sold to a black kiln. Even if you take the ransom, I am afraid you can't redeem him." After speaking, the black man quickly retracted his head and closed the door heavily. Logan glanced at Victor's door, and then noticed a thin layer of dust on the handle. It seemed that no one had touched it for several days. Recalling the black man's words, Logan frowned, went downstairs and returned to the car, briefly told Charles the situation, and drove several people to a nearby hotel for temporary stay. He returned to the car and thought about the forces that might take Victor away. He must find Victor. After all, that is Wolverine's only relative in the world. After so many separations, he never wants this last brother to leave again. In the evening, Logan parked the car outside a casino, turned off the engine and turned off the lights, sat in the car and smoked, staring at the casino through the smoke. Near nightfall is the time when the casino has the most traffic. Guests come from all directions, carrying gambling money, fantasizing about the dream of getting rich overnight and stepping into the casino gate. Under the colorful neon lights, they seem to see the illusion that they have stepped into the pinnacle of life. The owner of this casino is Mtnovel, who is also Victor's boss. At this time, the office on the second floor of the casino is on, and from time to time, people walk through the curtains. Logan stared at the office. Even if it wasn't Mtnovel, he must be an insider, but Logan didn't plan to go in and question directly. It would be too stupid to do so. After all, the security guards in the casino were not vegetarians. If they found out that he was forcing their boss, there would be a conflict. In that case, Victor might not be saved, but Dr. Rice or people from S.H.I.E.L.D. would be attracted. Now, he shouldn't make any big noise. As the cigarettes turned into butts, the night gradually deepened, and the lights on the second floor of the office finally went out. Logan extinguished the cigarette but in his hand, walked in the crowd with his head down, went all the way to the back door, climbed up to the second floor along the water pipe, and walked into the corridor. There were songs lingering below, and the gamblers were shouting wildly, but the second floor was very quiet. The soundproof building prevented any noise from breaking in. Logan quietly walked to the door of Mtlovel's office, put his ear against the door, and listened vigilantly to the movement inside. After making sure there was no sound of anyone breathing inside, Logan pushed the door open and walked in. The room was extremely dim, and the thick curtains blocked any colorful lights outside the window. If an ordinary person came here, he would probably not even know how to get around. Fortunately, Logan's eyes could see more clearly in the dark than in the daytime. He walked straight to Mtlovel's desk. It was obvious that Mr. Mtlovel seemed to have encountered some troubles recently. The ashtray was full of cigar butts, and there were several empty bottles of red wine on the table. The documents on the table were in a mess, all of which were financial reports and tax rates of several casinos. Logan had no interest in whether he evaded taxes. He carefully opened the drawer and slowly looked for any clues about Victor. After searching around, Logan found a report at the bottom of the drawer. The content was a debt notice, which indicated that Mtlovel had a debt of $50 million. Such a large debt would not be enough to pay even if all the casinos under his name were sold. Logan carefully checked the document and realized that the debt was due to the loss of Mtlovel in an investment project. If he didn't pay it back within a month, then this wealthy businessman would be completely bankrupt. Isn't it of any useful value that he had no interest in whether the wealthy businessman was bankrupt? But another document under the document instantly caught his attention. The document said cross-auction. That this should be just an official letter of the auction, but what really caught Logan's attention was the content below, which marked the auction item of this auction: Mutants. Chapter 52 Auction Banquet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A car was parked outside a splendidly decorated building. Its cheapness was incompatible with the building. Are you sure taking Laura in is a wise choice? Caliban turned back from the driver's seat and glanced at Laura and Logan in the back seat. She might make things worse. I mean, she's still young and inexperienced. Should I take you with me? Taiwan Novel Network. Logan rolled his eyes at him. A white man with albinism would become the center of attention on any occasion. Compared with him, although Laura was smaller, at least she would not receive as much attention. Lola won't cause trouble. If it weren't for the invitation, I would rather go alone. Logan took out a black invitation from his pocket. There was a silver cross imprinted on the cover. The workmanship looked very exquisite. Cross-auction invitation. This is the invitation letter taken out from Mtlovel's office yesterday. In addition to the invitation letter, the above requirements for participation also specifically indicate that two people must be traveling together, and the capital verification must be more than $200,000. For this reason, he had to dress up Laura carefully so that she could participate in the auction with him. As for the minimum capital verification of 200,000 yuan, it was relatively easy to solve. The money saved in the Lawrence family, plus the remuneration delivered by Gabriella before leaving, barely made up 200,000 yuan. Maybe Victor doesn't want us to save him. Taking huge risks will bring disaster to all of us, which will make him live with guilt forever. Caliban looked at Logan, very opposed to this risky move. Shut up, Logan interrupted Caliban coldly, his voice unmistakable. It's worth it for him. Hey, don't get excited. Caliban spoke quickly and pressed his hands down to signal Logan not to be angry. I was just talking casually. Besides, Victor may not be inside. He is a saber-toothed tiger. Who can catch him? Logan ignored Caliban and turned to adjust Laura's collar. The girl was wearing a brand new black suit and pink sunglasses. Her pink and jade-like appearance looked very lovely. In order to participate in the auction, Logan bought new suits for himself and Laura. Although they were not as expensive as the exclusive custom-made suits, they were much better than the cheap suits they often wore before. He whispered to Laura, "Don't be nervous later, you just need to follow me." Laura nodded obediently, with a hint of expectation between her brows. "Let's go." Logan pushed the door open and got out of the car, and the two of them walked towards the magnificent building together. Caliban in the car looked helplessly at the large and small figures, looking at the hundreds of meters high building, feeling a little worried in his heart. If there was a conflict like this, it would be difficult to escape. At the same time, Logan took Laura into the building and took the elevator to the cross-auction site on the 14th floor, as soon as he stepped out of the elevator. Logan couldn't help but be amazed by the high-end banquet hall. The entire banquet hall was decorated very high-end, and the soft-colored lights shone in the banquet hall. It was not dazzling, but it filled the entire banquet hall with a relaxing visual sense. A skilled pianist is playing soft notes on the stage. The soft music seems to cleanse the soul. The buffet-style pastries and delicacies on the table are exquisite products that ordinary people would not dare to dream of. Just in terms of presentation, there were many people standing in the hall, holding wine glasses and chatting in low voices. They were elegant and polite, the men were full of gentlemen, and the women seemed to be palace princesses. I am afraid that except for Logan and Laura, the rest of the people were present. They are all wealthy businessmen who can directly affect the entire Nevada economy. "Sir, what would you like to drink?" The waiter in a tuxedo walked slowly over, nodded to Logan very politely, and asked softly, "Brandy and juice." Logan glanced at Laura beside him. The waiter was not surprised at all because of Laura's age. After nodding respectfully, he went to serve 2 drinks to the two of them. Logan held the wine glass and took Laura to find a seat to sit down. Obviously, the banquet was just a formality, the highlight was the auction, so naturally no one cared about the exquisite food on the table. However, Laura Kinney couldn't take care of so much. She had very little food to eat in the laboratory. After escaping, she lived a simple life with Gabriella. How could she have seen so many delicious foods? She tasted all the candies and snacks on the table without any politeness, and the corners of her mouth turned up slightly in satisfaction. "Mr. Notland, why are you here so late?" A voice caught Logan's attention. He looked toward the door and saw Notland's figure walking out of the elevator. He smiled and said to the old friend who was asking next to him, "Something has delayed me." At the same time, he glanced at the banquet hall, but fortunately he did not recognize Logan. This is normal, after all. Logan had no direct contact with him at the beginning, he just accompanied Victor at the door of his office. Logan sat on the chair, paying close attention to Notland's movements. "What good things are you going to buy this time?" Notland smiled and took a glass of red wine from the waiter, talking to his old friend in a low voice. "It's hard to say. There are too many items in this auction, and they are all very attractive." The old friend replied softly. After a pause, he looked at Notland with a smile. "What about you? I guess you must have something good that you have your eye on." No. Notland narrowed his eyes, smiled and shook his head at his old friend. "I've prepared a big surprise this time." "Oh." The old friend was a little curious. Notland pretended to be mysterious, drinking red wine, and whispered, "You will know later, it will definitely open your eyes." The old friend's curiosity was completely aroused. "You make me look forward to this auction even more." Logan listened to the conversation between the two and frowned slightly. At this time, the waiter came out. At the same time, the piano stopped playing and the colored lights turned off. The waiter held up the microphone and announced that the auction was about to begin. Those who participated in the auction went to the hall to get their numbers and needed to sit down according to their numbers. Everyone in the venue began to move and walk towards the hall. Logan got the 17th and 18th seats, which were relatively forward seats, and took Laura to choose a seat and sat down. Just as he sat down, Notland also held the number 16 plate and sat on Logan's left. Logan just took a look and then retracted his gaze, not intending to pay attention. However, Notland took the initiative to greet him enthusiastically. "Lance Notland, may I know your name, sir?" "James Logan." Logan had no choice but to force a smile in response. "James. Mtnovel murmured in a low voice, and asked again with some curiosity, what business is Mr. James in? But even if he didn't know all the wealthy businessmen in Las Vegas, he had heard of their names more or less, but Logan's name was really a bit unfamiliar. Logistics industry, rarely show up. Logan made up a random lie, trying not to look at him straight in the face. Logistics business? Haven't heard of a family with the surname Logan in the logistics industry. Mtnovel stared at Logan's face and suddenly said, but you look a little familiar, have we met before? Chapter 53 Victor in the Cage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Maybe, but I'm not impressed. Logan shrugged calmly at Mtnovel, but Mtnovel remained unyielding, staring at Logan's face, touching his chin and murmuring, we must have met before, maybe at some previous gathering, but neither of us paid attention. Maybe. Search TWKN on Google, Logan nodded, showing a repulsive indifference, but his indifference did not dampen Mtnovel's desire to chat. He moved towards Logan and whispered, you came here for that thing too? What? Logan frowned slightly and turned his head to ask. You do not know? Mtnovel seemed a little surprised. Mutants, I thought everyone who participated in this auction knew about it. Mutants? Logan pretended to be surprised, I thought they were extinct long ago. Not really. Mtnovel shook his head, it's just that the number has become extremely rare. Logan thought for a moment, glanced at Mtnovel, and asked insinuatingly, what type of mutant is this auction? If I remember correctly, there are many kinds of them. It's a saber-toothed tiger. Mtnovel saw that Logan seemed interested and immediately became energetic, that guy's appearance is no different from that of a normal person. He won't attract anyone's attention when walking on the street. He is a level 4 mutant. A guy of this level, not to mention that mutants are rare now, even when the mutant community was strong decades ago, there weren't necessarily that many. Interesting. Logan touched his chin and murmured, the organizer can actually get such a guy. Hee hee. Mtnovel smiled brightly, with a twinkle in his eye, how about it, are you tempted? Do you want to make an offer later, that he is the seller of Victor? The higher the price of Victor can be raised, the greater his interests will be. For this reason, he has encouraged many people. Not interested. Logan said with a bored look, I remember those guys are very dangerous. What's the use of buying them back to be a thug who looks after the home? Maybe they will turn their guns and kill me first. This answer obviously made Mtnovel a little disappointed. At the same time, he looked at Logan with some surprise and said in surprise, you come here and you don't know the role of mutants? I don't know. Logan still looked very indifferent, I just heard that this auction will be very interesting. I happen to have some free time recently, so I brought my daughter to relax. While speaking, he pointed to Laura on the seat next to him. Mtnovel glanced at Laura. It was a weird guy who would choose to come to the auction to relax, although he was surprised, Mtnovel didn't say much. After all, most rich people have their own little hobbies, and continue to promote mutants. Those guys' organs are very valuable, such as hearts, livers and kidneys. There are also people on the dark web who are collecting them at high prices. If you buy them here and resell them, you may make a lot of difference. Originally, he wanted to do this to Victor and contact the buyer on the dark web, but after thinking about it, he felt it was not safe. After all, no one knows whether the other party will use money to trade with him or use bullets to negotiate the price with him. In the end, he will choose a more secure auction. Although the price will be lower, it is at least safe and stable. What are they seeking mutant organs for? Logan asked curiously. God knows. Mtnovel shrugged indifferently, maybe it's for experimentation. Maybe it's because you want to transplant it into yourself to gain certain abilities. Anyway, there are always people who want to buy it. The chat between the two ended when the lights suddenly dimmed, and the spotlight was given to the auctioneer on the stage. Under the dim light, Logan clenched his fists, his eyes filled with murderous intent, and the anger in his heart was exploding crazily in the dim environment. The mutant X-Men once made tragic sacrifices to protect the world and to protect this group of ignorant people. But in just a few decades, they have gone from heroes who are admired by everyone to fugitives that everyone wants to beat, and even their tribe has become a commodity that can be sold publicly. This group of people who were once protected by them have now become so-called successful people who are above others, coveting the organs of those heroes in the past. Logan gritted his teeth and his muscles bulged under his suit. Laura on the side also stared with black grape-like eyes, which were always fixed on Notrand, revealing her anger. At the same time, the auction was in full swing. The fifth lot was carried onto the auction stage by a waiter. Like the previous four, they were all exquisite antiques from a long time ago. The auctioneer held up his gavel and introduced the origin and starting price of the antique. Constantly encouraging people below to make bids, but it was obvious that no one present came here for the antiques, and not many people raised placards. In the end, it only fell into the pocket of a wealthy white businessman at a price that was only 20% higher than the starting price. Congratulations to Mr. Number 67 for successfully bidding on this exquisite sword. Next, it will be one of the highlights of this auction. It is a very rare and precious collection. I believe everyone present will be very interested. That the lights at the scene began to flicker as the auctioneer spoke passionately. At the same time, a waiter walked up to Notrand, lay down and said something in his ear, and then Notrand got up and left with an excited look on his face. Before leaving, he did not forget to say something to Roland next to him. Jen raised his eyebrows and said, "The main event is coming." Logan frowned and looked at Notrand's back. The auctioneer on the stage shouted excitedly, "Let's invite tonight's sixth lot to the stage." After the words fell, a huge cage was lifted up by 6 attendants. The specially made cage is made of thick heavy iron at the top and bottom, and there are thick steel bars in the middle. In the cage, there was a man whose limbs were tied by huge chains. The unkempt beard on his face looked very messy. His hair was also messy, and there were a lot of mud stains on it. The shabby suit on his body looked like it had just been taken out of the trash. The whole person looked like a savage freshly captured from the jungle, but even though he was a prisoner, his eyes were still terrifyingly cold, as if the temperature around him had dropped a few degrees because of those gloomy eyes. Victor. Logan recognized the person in the cage as his brother, Victor. At this time, he no longer had the reputation of a saber-toothed tiger, and was more like a wild cat that anyone could bully. Tonight's lot number 6 comes from an ancient and mysterious race, mutants, saber-toothed tigers. The auctioneer held up his gavel and explained to the crowd in a high-pitched voice, "This is a ferocious guy. It takes 6 times the normal amount of anesthetic to control him into what he is now. Even though he is dirty and sluggish, his explosive power is amazing. A pair of nails that can be extended at will can easily pierce steel. Both its strength and speed are far beyond ordinary people. There are no flaws in the internal organs. It is simply a perfect treasure." He kept pointing at Victor in the cage, listing detailed data from height to weight, as well as the length and thickness of his limbs. Just like the antiques he introduced before, the various parameters were extremely clear, as if the person in the cage was not a person at all, but a beautiful dead thing. And his introduction made everyone who participated in the auction feel extremely curious. They stared at Victor in the cage with wide eyes and nodded frequently. As the auction started, everyone kept raising their placards and scrambling to give their bids. 1,300,000, I want this wild cat. 1.5 million, my zoo needs a guy like this. 2 million, my animal room is perfect for him. The whole auction was in a state of excitement. In their eyes, what was in the cage was not the same species as them at all, but just a strange animal. The bids made Logan gradually become gloomy. His eyes swept over the crowd, and finally stayed at the backstage of the auction. He leaned down and whispered in Laura's ear, "Go to the door and wait for me first." After saying that, he stood up without hesitation, clenched his fists and walked backstage. Chapter 54 Ruthless Massacre. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Search TWKAN on Google.in. The heated auction. Everyone's attention was focused on Victor, and no one noticed Logan's movements. As prices continue to rise, the number of people holding placards gradually decreases. In the end, Logan could clearly hear the auctioneer's final bid when the hammer fell, $5 million. A living person has been given a price that can be measured in money by these capitalists, just like the black slaves before the Civil War. It's hard to imagine that this is a banquet in a civilized world. Logan suppressed his anger to kill everyone and continued to move forward. After taking a few steps, he saw Mtnovel. He was holding up his mobile phone and chatting with someone. His loud voice did not suppress the joy in his heart, and his target seemed to be in the box next to Logan. Logan's eyes sank, and while Mtnovel was concentrating on the phone and didn't notice him, he quickly dodged into the box. There was no one in the box, but the lights were on, and there was even hot tea on the table, arranged to welcome guests. Outside the door, Mtnovel's footsteps gradually approached. At this time, Logan really wanted to cut this guy into pieces, but he still had to find out Victor's location from the other person's mouth, so he had no choice but to hide in the bathroom in the box and quickly close the door, leaving only a slight gap. Through the gap, he saw Mtnovel entering the box with a big belly, sitting leisurely on the sofa, raising his watch to check the time from time to time, as if he was waiting for someone. After a while, the door of the private room was opened, and a wealthy white businessman walked in, holding the bidding number in his hand. Number 77. He was the one who just took the photo of Victor. Mtnovel quickly stood up and greeted the wealthy businessman warmly. Congratulations, after tonight, that tiger will be yours. The wealthy businessman smiled and said, 5 million, I hope your tiger is worthy of this price. Don't worry, I guarantee your satisfaction, that guy is simply a beast. Mtnovel invited the wealthy businessman to take a seat, and the two chatted freely on the sofa. If I remember correctly, this tiger has been working for you. Why do you suddenly want to sell it? A mutant with extraordinary combat power can help you get rid of many deadbeats. The wealthy businessman drank tea and asked curiously. Mtnovel chuckled lightly, took out a cigar and lit it, raised his eyebrows and said, even if he pursues the debt for a lifetime, can he get back 5 million for me? Besides, that guy has been so passive and slow in his work recently. He even paid tens of thousands of dollars. I can't take back the small account, it's useless to keep it. The wealthy businessman was still very curious and asked puzzledly, how do you control such a guy? These mutants don't seem to be controlled so easily. He had seen many mutants, many of whom were his prisoners, but mutants gave him the impression of being unruly and difficult to control. There were not many guys like Mtnovel who could command mutants. Humph, how dare he be disobedient? Mtnovel snorted coldly, if it weren't for me, that guy would have starved to death long ago. He is just a rat worried about being caught by the government, hiding in the trash can and shivering. If I hadn't been kind and gave him, how can he live so long with a piece of bread and a job? Let alone order him to die, he will have to die. After a pause, he continued to laugh and said, to be honest, if I wasn't in urgent need of money, I really wouldn't want to take action against this guy. A tiger who looks after the house and the courtyard can indeed help me solve a lot of troubles. The wealthy businessman smiled and said, then I'm lucky to catch up with you. Now I really need that guy's heart. Heart? Mtnovel was stunned for a moment, then laughed loudly and said, don't worry, that guy's heart is absolutely healthy, and I promise he won't let you down. At this time, Logan, who was hiding in the bathroom, couldn't bear it anymore. His eyes were cold and murderous, and his gloomy face was filled with murderous intent. Pang. He opened the bathroom door fiercely and strode out. Mr. Logan, why are you here? Mtnovel was stunned when he saw Logan, and did not notice his murderous eyes at the first time. Is this your friend? The wealthy businessman was also stunned for a moment, but he immediately stood up and extended his hand politely to Logan. In an instant, he changed from an executioner talking about human body trading and organ trading to an elegant gentleman who took the initiative to shake hands with others. Hello, I am. Before the wealthy businessman finished speaking, a burst of white light suddenly flashed in front of his eyes. Whoops, poof. The next second, a section of his hand was instantly chopped off, and blood spurted from the severed limb. Ah! The severe stinging sensation made the wealthy businessman howl with fear on his face. He held the severed limb tremblingly and stepped back, his roaring sound piercing. Fortunately, the soundproofing effect of the box is excellent. Unless the bomb explodes, no sound can be transmitted. Logan raised the steel claw again, and the howling head instantly fell to the ground, blood splattered, and drops of blood continued to drip from the silver-white steel claw. He stared at the fallen body of the wealthy businessman and said with a cold face, "You are not worthy of shaking my hand. You're a mutant." Notland's eyes shrank. He stood up quickly, reached for the gun at his waist, and raised his hand to point Logan's head and pull the trigger. Click. The steel claws were swept out, and the icy cold light passed in front of Notland. The pistol was cut off directly, and the parts fell down with a clang. Hiss! Notland gasped in horror and hurriedly let go and threw away the broken pistol. At the same time, he also noticed Logan's frosty eyes. An unprecedented fear filled his heart. He stared into Logan's eyes, his lower limbs trembled unconsciously, and he stepped back. "What are you going to do?" Notland was horrified and his whole body was shaking. Logan just stared into his eyes and pressed forward step by step without saying a word, but the murderous intent in his eyes said everything. Notland's legs trembled and his voice trembled. "No, if we have anything to discuss, I can give you money, a lot of money. I have several casinos under my name, and the annual revenue is an astronomical figure. These are all I can give it to you." Logan still didn't speak. He just dodged suddenly, strode to Notland, grabbed his collar, and raised it high. Notland waved his limbs in fear in midair. Before he could continue to beg for mercy, Logan slammed him against the coffee table next to him. Pang! The huge force instantly tore the entire coffee table into pieces. Cough! The tearing impact on his body made Notland spurt a mouthful of blood from his mouth. He looked at Logan with a horrified look on his face, and said in pain with his mouth full of blood, "Killing me will do you no good, you can't get out of this auction. Yes, let me go and I can give you money, lots and lots of money. Your life is more important to me than money." Logan stared at him coldly, made a fist with his other hand, stretched out his sharp steel claw, and stabbed hard. Click. The sharp claw blade was almost close to Notland's face, and it stabbed hard into the torn coffee table. Notland could clearly feel the cold light on the steel claws, and the fear in his eyes was even worse, but he no longer dared to struggle. "Victor, where are you?" Logan's voice was extremely cold and his eyes were stern. "Warehouse, there is a warehouse on the 14th floor, all the auction items are there." The fear of dying made Notland almost scream in response, and then he even begged, "I can help you bring him out. There is no handover yet, he is still mine, and I can pay for the breach of contract. Jean can help you rescue." Click. Logan didn't listen to his nonsense, put his fist on his chest, and the steel claw popped out. The sharp claw blade instantly pierced the heart, and blood spurted out. Chapter 55, Victor in Disarray, sets out again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Google search TWKAN. The room was filled with a strong smell of blood, and the splashing blood dyed the carpet of the entire living room red. Logan stared coldly at the two corpses on the ground, put away his steel claws, turned calmly and ran to the door of the box, and locked the door completely. Then he went into the bathroom and washed off the blood on his hands and the blood stains on his clothes. When he wiped the blood off his face in front of the mirror, he saw a small window reflected. In the mirror, the window was neither too big nor too small, just enough for people to pass through. Logan wiped all the obvious blood stains, quickly got out of the small window, walked along the wall on the periphery of the 12-story building, successfully entered another empty box, and returned to the auction site again. At this time, the auction was still going on, and the sound of bidding came one after another. Lola. Logan left the auction room, ran to the banquet hall, and looked around. At this time, all the guests were in the auction room. The banquet hall was silent and empty, and even the servants had all left. A small hand suddenly rose from behind the table. Laura raised her head and her cheeks were bulging. There were a lot of snack crumbs on the collar of her suit. "We have to leave here quickly." Logan hurried forward and grabbed Laura's little hand. At the same time, he noticed that Laura looked reluctant at the snacks on the table. He picked up a handful of snacks, stuffed them into Laura's pocket, and whispered, "Let's go." Laura touched her bulging pocket with satisfaction and followed Logan to leave. According to Notland's instructions, Logan found the warehouse on the 14th floor, but there was a huge guard standing at the door of the warehouse. Standing at the corner of the corridor, Logan half turned his head and fell into thought. The corner was more than 10 meters away from the guard. If he rushed out rashly, the guard would have enough time to call for reinforcements on the intercom. It was necessary to ensure that the guard could not notify others before he was dealt with. At this time, Logan noticed Laura at his feet and instantly came up with a plan. He patted Laura. The girl tilted her head, looking puzzled. Go and distract the guard. Logan pointed at the guard at the door of the warehouse and whispered. Laura looked over, then looked at the half-finished chocolate bar in her hand, stuffed it into her mouth without hesitation, and then ran towards the guard. Hearing the footsteps, the guard was obviously startled, quickly turned around and aimed his gun, and when he saw it was a little girl, he was relieved and put away the gun. Little friend, are you lost? Lola silently pulled the corner of the guard's clothes and walked towards the stairs. The guard looked at such a cute girl, and his heart was no longer on guard. He let Laura pull him away. Where are you taking me? Where are your parents? Lola said nothing and took the guard directly into the stairwell. Bang! A dull fall sounded, and a moment later Laura came out alone, clapping her hands. It seems that you have done this kind of thing a lot, and you are really good at it. Logan touched Laura's soft face, and the girl remained silent. The two stood in front of the warehouse door, which was locked, but such a lock was not a difficult task for Logan. The steel claws swept over, and the chain fell to the ground, pushing the door open and entering the warehouse. The huge warehouse was filled with various auction items, antique paintings, and precious jewelry. It was simply dazzling, and its price could even buy half of the city of Santa Fe. Of course, Logan's goal was not these. After searching for a while, he found the cage in the center of the warehouse, and the cage was covered with a layer of white cloth. Logan was anxious and suddenly lifted the white cloth. However, as soon as the white cloth was opened, Victor in the cage jumped up quickly, rushed to the cage, and waved his claws across the cage. Damn bastards, if I go out, I will definitely tear you shameless guys to pieces. Calm down, Victor, it's me. Logan spoke quickly. Logan? Why are you here? Victor was stunned when he heard the familiar voice, and retracted his palm to touch his dirty face. When he saw that it was really Logan, he said excitedly, Quick, let me out. Logan stretched out his steel claws and easily cut off the cage and the chain that tied Victor, and the two hugged tightly. Logan looked at the haggard Victor and said anxiously, What's the situation? With your ability, those guys can't catch you. Mtnovel may have a certain amount of power, but with the group of thugs under his command, it is impossible for him to be Victor's opponent. Victor's expression dimmed instantly, and he cursed. It was the damn anesthetic. The thugs came to me, and I thought they were assigning me a task, so I was not on guard. As a result, they injected me with anesthetic. His eyes were filled with hatred. Why, I have been so humble, obeying their orders like a dog, but why do they still treat me like this? Logan, you know, those guys just treat me like a wild animal in the zoo. Logan sighed and patted his shoulder. Let's talk about this later, we have to leave here first. No. Victor straightened up, clenched his fists, and the fierce light in his eyes bloomed again. I'm going to kill that bastard Mtnovel. Although Mtnovel saved his life, he should have repaid the kindness of the piece of bread after years of hard work. Now all that is left is the hatred of betrayal. No need. Logan motioned Victor not to be angry. I have helped you deal with those two guys, and the bodies are still downstairs. Victor was slightly stunned, then smiled bitterly and patted Logan on the shoulder. Thank you. Prestige plus 10, Logan raised his eyebrows, which was also a pleasant surprise. Why are you being polite to me? Let's go. If the body is found, it will be too late for us. Logan took advantage of the police blocking the entire floor and quickly ran out of the building, taking Victor and Laura into the car. Are you all right? Caliban, who had been waiting for a long time, looked at Logan and the others who were safe and sound, and breathed a sigh of relief. When the patrol police rushed over just now, he was almost scared to death. It's okay, let's go. Logan looked at the police cars whizzing in from a distance. The whole building was completely surrounded and cordons were set up around it. He hurriedly urged Caliban to drive away. The police in Las Vegas are not the same as those in Santa Fe. As soon as he left the building, he returned to the hotel and immediately picked up the professor and drove to the highway. After all, he killed someone here, and it was about mutants. No one knew whether Dr. Rice and the guys from S.H.I.E.L.D. would come here after smelling the smell. In short, he couldn't stay here any longer and had to go to North Dakota. Maybe it was time to leave the country temporarily. P.S. Thank you to all the big guys who have followed up here. I beg you to follow up and support me with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. The subsequent plot will not disappoint you. Chapter 56 Heading to North Dakota, Dr. Rice's Pursuit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. An hour after the incident, the police quickly arranged to seal off the city. Fortunately, Logan managed to leave the city before the border cordon was set up. He could no longer stay in Las Vegas, and he did not plan to stop halfway. He planned to rush to North Dakota overnight, where Laura's friends at the border could sneak into Canada. Victor, who had just joined, had no objection to the proposal. This was a very long journey, but with Victor's joining, the journey became less boring. Perhaps because of his age, Victor gradually became an old man who liked to nag. In addition, when he was a thug for Notland, he had no suitable chat partner around him. This made him pour out his inner thoughts and past interesting stories when he met Logan and his friends. In the hard struggle for more than 10 years, there are always many interesting things worth sharing. From a mercenary to a thug, Victor said a lot until the topic came to Notland. For this former employer, Victor was only angry. Even though he knew that the other party had been killed by Logan, he still couldn't get rid of the hatred in his heart. Seeing Victor's rising anger, Logan knew that his brother was back and would not kowtow to anyone again. Perhaps from this night on, the reputation of the saber-toothed tiger would rise again. The long night will eventually pass, the sky will turn white, the morning light will shine on the car window, and the birds will sing in the surrounding woods. Logan looked at the fuel tank that was about to run out, and turned the car into a nearby gas station and stopped. While refueling the car, he also replenished the daily necessities at the nearby 24-hour convenience store and drove on the road again. But what gave Logan a headache now was not the long escape journey and the pursuers behind him who looked like dogs with noses, but the professor's medicine. Before escaping from Santa Fe City, he did not have time to purchase enough medicine. Now the medicine bottle is about to run out. Without the help of medicine, the professor's health has deteriorated visibly, but he had no choice. Although he had nearly $200,000 in cash reserves, he had no other way to buy medicine outside Santa Fe City. In addition, their identities made it unlikely that they could enter the city to register and buy medicine. Victor looked at the professor's old age and couldn't help but sigh. The once strongest brain became so miserable in his later years. This made him think of himself. From then on, the saber-toothed tiger that was amazing in the world became a casino thug driven by others at will, but it was obvious that the professor was more embarrassed than him. Now the professor couldn't even control his own abilities and was on the verge of losing control at any time. Logan looked at the professor's appearance and couldn't help but sigh. Now helping the professor recover his body is also the top priority. Otherwise, if he loses control one day, it will be an unimaginable disaster. It's just that people are old and irreversible. Of course, it doesn't mean that it can't be recovered. If the super serum can be obtained, the professor's condition can be improved and he can no longer rely on drugs for control, but it is obviously unlikely at present. They can only take it one step at a time. The building was surrounded by a cordon, and two bodies covered with white cloth were carried out. Steve Rogers waved to the police officers carrying the bodies to stop, and lifted the white cloth, and the shocking claw marks were in sight. One was pierced through the chest, and the heart was instantly torn apart. The blood dyed the suit red, and the fear before death jumped on his face. The other was even worse. The body was separated, and the broken parts were smooth and sharp. Steve looked at the miserable state of the two bodies, frowning. The police officer on the other side handed over the tablet. Captain Rogers, this is the surveillance picture of the suspect. Steve took it and recognized the person in the picture as Wolverine Logan at a glance. He murmured, "Why did he do this? Although Wolverine has blood, he is definitely not a bloodthirsty person, and he will not kill ordinary people for no reason." After a brief thought, the police officer responded, "He should be saving people." What? Steve was a little confused. He had just arrived and was not clear about the specific situation, including the fact that there were mutants at the auction, so he did not understand what the police officer meant. For a while. The police officer was about to continue explaining, but was interrupted by the SHIELD agent who came. Captain Rogers, I received an order from Director Fury to take full control of this case. No one may participate in this case without Director Fury's consent. The agent wore a black suit and sunglasses, and his burly body inserted himself between Steve and the police officer. Steve frowned and said, I think I have the right to participate in any criminal case involving mutants. If it was just an ordinary case, he would naturally not be interested in participating, but this matter concerned Logan, his old comrade in arms, and he still had too many questions about this former comrade in arms. Sorry, Captain. The agent took out his ID and shook his head, saying, my appointment was personally issued by Director Fury. I hope you won't interfere. Steve glanced at the ID. As a Level 7 agent, he was indeed a senior member of SHIELD, and he was personally appointed by Fury, which made it difficult for Steve to refute. He had no choice but to nod. You can take over the case, but send a copy of the information to my office after you find out. Before leaving, Steve took a photo with the police officer at the scene at the request of the police officer. After the battle in New York, the image of Captain America became more deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. He had long been accustomed to this situation, but now he really couldn't force out too much smile, and his mind was all on the case. After the group photo was taken, the flip phone in his pocket rang. It was a call from Nick Fury. Steve, Hydra is here. Fury's voice rang on the phone, his voice heavy. Those guys seem to be trying to do something again. I need you to come back quickly. Hearing Hydra, Steve instantly became energetic. I'll go back right away. However, no one noticed a van parked far away from the building. Just as I thought, Logan will indeed come to see Victor. They really have a deep brotherly love. Dr. Rice, who was in the passenger seat, stared deeply at the blocked building. Doctor, they killed someone, so they shouldn't stay in Las Vegas. In the driver's seat was a mercenary leader, turning his head to analyze Les nodded, now set off to North Dakota. They will definitely go to the so-called Garden of Eden. That damn woman Gabriella often talks about childish stories about the Garden of Eden. X-23 will definitely let Logan take them there. Bang! As soon as he finished speaking, there was a sudden violent crash from behind the car, and the car shook as if it was a beast trying to break out of its cage. Don't worry. Les patted the car gently and comforted in a low voice, it will be your turn to take action soon. Whoops! Bang! In the black carriage, a steel claw suddenly appeared, scattering a dazzling silver cold light. Chapter 57. A younger Logan, clones appear. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The coordinates of the Garden of Eden on Laura's paper were the Drax National Wildlife Park in North Dakota. As it approached 010/clock, the urban buildings and even the buildings on the roadside became very few, and there was only a gradually growing desert. Transition to XCBV-VXV forest area. Logan parked the vehicle on the side of the road leading into the forest. Victor, who was sleeping with his eyes closed in the passenger seat, noticed the vehicle that suddenly stopped. He opened his eyes to check his surroundings. After realizing that it was not the destination, he looked at Logan with a puzzled look on his face. Is there a breakdown? After thinking for a while, Logan explained, now we are Dr. Rice's target. That guy's dog nose will definitely follow us all the way. If we just rush over, we will become his target. The coordinates of the road may bring danger to other mutants in Eden. Victor, the co-pilot, frowned slightly. Through the conversation along the way, he also learned about Laura and also understood that Logan and the others were in danger of being chased by Dr. Rice. Then what do you mean, you don't plan to go? Victor asked doubtfully. Laura in the back seat suddenly became anxious, frowning and staring at Logan with a pair of watery eyes. No. Logan shook his head and explained, it's just that we can't let it go like this. We must find a way to ensure the safety of the gathering place. He remembered seeing such a scene in the movie Wolverine 3. In his twilight years, Wolverine took Laura to the gathering place, but in the end he attracted Dr. Rice and a group of lackeys, causing trouble to the small mutants at the gathering place. The man caused so much trouble that the place became Wolverine's grave. Now he doesn't want to see such a scene happen again. We can get rid of them and go. Caliban suddenly spoke, go to a nearby town and leave traces, such as exposing steel claws to scare a few people, giving them the illusion that we have gone to other places. Logan shook his head, no, Dr. Rice is not a fool. He will definitely notice our true intention and must find a safe way. It's not that simple to deceive Dr. Rice, and he most likely knows the coordinates of the Garden of Eden, and he may have already arrived with an army to prepare for an encirclement and suppression operation. What are you going to do? Charles asked after a moment of silence. Logan took a deep breath, glanced at the broad road leading straight into the forest, and said solemnly, this is the only way to the gathering place. Dr. Rice and the others must pass through here if they want to enter the gathering place. As he spoke, Logan's eyes gradually became cold. We must completely deal with those bastards here, otherwise we will not be able to have peace even if we reach the gathering place. You mean to kill them? Caliban took a breath and looked a little anxious. Although there are 5 mutants in our car, we may only be able to fight 2.5, but Dr. Rice and the others can bring a fully armed army. Although Wolverine and Saber-Toothed Tiger in their heyday were indeed fearless of any army, they are now old and their combat effectiveness has been greatly reduced. Even with a little wolf cub like Laura, they may not be able to match Dr. Rice and the others. From Caliban's perspective, this was a risky move that would lead to death. I have a chance of winning. Logan's eyes sank slightly. Victor also clenched his fist, just in time. The anger in my heart needs a place to vent. He was obedient, but was betrayed by Rand in the end. This anger would not dissipate because of Notran's death, and a battle was needed to vent it. I support Logan too. Charles smiled and spoke. Although he could not provide any substantial help to the battle, he still supported all Logan's actions. As for Laura, not to mention, there is no way she would give up going to the Garden of Eden. Crazy, all crazy. Caliban looked at them, but ultimately had to give in. Logan drove the car into a jungle, took branches to cover it, and asked Caliban to hide in the woods with the professor. While hiding the car, he accidentally discovered a cave. There are high slopes on both sides outside the cave, and the space is relatively narrow, making it a natural ambush point. This place is nice. Logan pointed in the direction of the cave. As long as we can lure them here, we can launch an encirclement and suppression campaign against them. Their abilities are all about close combat. With their speed and sharp claws, they can perform more effective attacks in tight places. On the contrary, Dr. Rice and his army would not operate well in such a boundary. The ricochet might even injure one of their own people. Victor nodded. Lola and I are responsible for leading them here. You can take action when you find an opportunity. After finalizing the plan, the 3 took out compressed biscuits and water for simple replenishment. It was getting dark. After Logan set up a campfire, he asked Victor and Laura to wait by the campfire, while he climbed up a big tree next to him and hid himself among the dense branches. A few hours later, the sun completely disappeared into the horizon, and the sky gradually became dark. In the silent jungle, a cluster of bonfires illuminated a patch of orange. Victor sat cross-legged in front of the campfire, half of his face reflected in the orange firelight, and he kept wiping his outstretched claws. Laura looked at his appearance, tilted her head and thought for a while, then she also stretched out her steel claws and rubbed them on a stone. However, she only polished the sharp steel claws twice, and the hard stone was like it was cut in half like tofu. Victor couldn't help laughing, looking at Laura's steel claws, and said, "You are really Logan's child, even your claws are made of steel." Although Laura only has 2 steel claws on each hand, their sharpness and slightly curved arc are exactly the same as Logan's. With such obvious recognition, no one would believe that they have nothing to do with Logan. Laura didn't say anything, just wiped the steel claws on her clothes, and then took out 2 marshmallows from her pocket, inserted them on the steel claws, and put them on the fire to roast them twice. When the frost on the surface of the marshmallow melted into caramel, she took it back and blew twice, and then opened her mouth to bite it. But her hand was just halfway up. and she stopped after. Thinking for a while, looked at Victor, and then looked at the marshmallows with some reluctance. After hesitating for 2 seconds, she generously handed out her claws, indicating Victor to take one to eat. Victor was amused by the girl's generosity and shook his head, saying, "You eat it. I don't like sweets." The girl smiled instantly, and without hesitation, she retracted her steel claws, bit off 2 marshmallows in one bite, and chewed them with satisfaction. "It's really like it." Victor looked at Laura and couldn't help murmuring again, but this peaceful scene didn't last too long. In the crackling firelight, Victor noticed the footsteps approaching slowly behind him. He condensed his eyes and stood up quickly. However, as soon as he turned around, he saw an extremely familiar figure walking out of the woods. Looking at the extremely familiar face, the fierce light on Victor's face dissipated, and he asked in confusion, "Logan, huh?" As soon as the voice fell, the steel claws stretched out violently, and the silver-white steel claws scattered cold light under the night light. Logan suddenly burst out, with violent murderous intent in his dark pupils, and rushed straight towards Victor. A cold light flashed through Victor's eyes, and his expression suddenly changed. With the help of the firelight, he could see clearly that it was not Logan at all. No, to be precise, it was a younger Logan. Chapter 58 Logan X-24. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 58 Logan X-24. The night was deep, and the bonfire in the woods was swaying, with light and shadow intertwined. The sharp steel claws flashed coldly in the red-orange firelight, and the fake Logan was like a flash of lightning, rushing towards Victor. The gust of wind caused by the mad run disrupted the blooming flames, and the flames flickered. Victor's eyes shrank, and he quickly dodged to block. His claws stretched out, and he was entangled with the fake Logan. Lola, squatting in front of the bonfire, looked at the 2 people who suddenly started fighting, and was at a loss for a moment. Her glass-like eyes kept scanning the 2 people, and she tilted her head and fell into confusion. Taiwan Novel Network. The fake Logan's steel claws were extremely sharp, dancing in the dark night, with cold light splashing everywhere. The surrounding grass was swept by the cold light, and the branches were separated in an instant, and the broken grass path danced in the firelight. On the other side, Victor's tiger claws were also not to be underestimated. Every punch he threw could make a dull sound of breaking wind. The explosive power of speed and strength allowed him to face sneak attacks with ease. Bang bang bang. The dull collision sounds echoed in the silent jungle, the clash of claws and the collision of fists. Each move showed a killing move. In just a few minutes, the chests of the 2 were covered with scratches, and their clothes were completely shattered. The horrible injuries made people dare not look directly at them, and the scarlet blood seeped out and kept dripping on the grass path. Pine. The 2 men's eyes flashed with murderous intent, and they punched at the same time. The 2 fists collided, and the powerful explosive force instantly set off a hurricane. The bonfire swayed continuously. The 2 were bounced away by this strong force, rolling on the grass, and blood flowed from their fists. After releasing the strength in their bodies, the 2 quickly got up, sprinted forward, and fell into a melee again, but the stalemate did not last long. Victor's aging body made it impossible for him to fight for a long time. Although his explosive power was still there, his endurance was not as good as before, and the speed of punching was gradually slowing down. The fake Logan seized the opportunity, grabbed Victor's arm and pulled it hard, and clenched his other hand tightly and punched him hard in the chest. Bang. The dull sound sounded again, and the terrifying force in front of his chest instantly lifted him up and hit a big tree behind him. In an instant, the trunk trembled and leaves fell. Cough. Victor struggled to stand up, coughing up blood, and felt a tearing pain in his chest. He gritted his teeth and endured it, staring at the fake Logan who was approaching. His eyes were cold, and he shot out again. The 2 sides were anxious again, and the scene was chaotic, but Victor, who was physically weak, was finally defeated by the fierce attack of the fake Logan, and was caught by a flaw and hit in the chest. The fake Logan burst out with unimaginable terrifying power at this moment. Victor only felt his chest concave, a lot of blood spurted out of his mouth, and his body was instantly knocked away, falling heavily into the blazing bonfire. The bonfire was scattered, and Victor's clothes were also ignited by the flames, and the flames flew. The burning feeling on his body made Victor panic, and he quickly reached out to slap the flames on his clothes. Swish! Seeing this, the fake Logan suddenly ejected his steel claws and rushed towards Victor again. With a cold light, Victor's eyes shrank suddenly, and he had no time to dodge. Just as the steel claws were about to pierce Victor, a black shadow suddenly rushed out and knocked the fake Logan away. "Are you okay?" Logan stared at the knockdown fake and asked Victor behind him. "It's okay." Victor panted heavily, looking at Logan's back, but did not dare to relax at all, and asked in a deep voice, "Are you real or fake?" The fake cultivated with Logan's genes was too similar to the original, which made him have to be on guard. When you were a kid in a manor in Canada, you dug a small hole in the bathhouse and often watched the maids bathing. You thought no one noticed, but... Shut up. Before Logan finished speaking, Victor interrupted him, "Don't mention this again." As he spoke, he quickly changed the subject and looked at the fake Logan who had climbed up again in the dark. He said in a deep voice, "This guy's ability is not inferior to ours when we were young. Those biologists really care about you very much. The clones are one after another." While speaking, he couldn't help but glance at Laura. X-24. Logan stared at the clone in the dark and remembered what Donald said in the abandoned laboratory. Dr. Rice used more than 20 experimental subjects, and finally successfully cultivated only 2 Wolverines. One was the perfect X-23 Laura, and the other was slightly lacking X-24. Obviously, the one in front of him was the defective one. Although there are some defects, the steel claws are also made of adamantium alloy, and the self-healing factor is also comparable to the young Wolverine. Its combat effectiveness should not be underestimated. As expected of your child, it looks exactly like you. Victor recovered his strength a little, staring at X-24, who was staring at him with his steel claws in the dark. "A fake is a fake after all," Logan snorted coldly, and also stretched out his steel claws with a sharp look in his eyes. However, the charge that X-24 imagined did not happen. Instead, he just stood there quietly, and except for staring at Logan with his eyes, he did not make any other movements. Just when Logan was puzzled, a burst of dense footsteps suddenly came from a distance, accompanied by a strong flashlight that could illuminate the forest like daylight. A group of soldiers armed with live ammunition surrounded Logan and his men in an orderly manner. Dozens of rifles were pointed at them, ready to shoot them into sieves at any time. Seeing this, Logan's heart sank, and he quickly hugged Laura in his arms and scanned the crowd. More than 60 people, it's really a big deal. Victor showed his tiger claws and spoke in a deep voice. Logan's eyes were cold, and he glanced at the cave not far away, frowning. He originally wanted to lead people to that cave. After all, that place could be said to be their home ground, but now it seems that this plan will fail. "Logan Howlett, we meet again." Dr. Rice walked out of the crowd behind him, with a sinister smile on his face, as if looking at prey in a cage. "You can't take that girl away, hand her over. I can guarantee that you will suffer less." Logan turned around and stared at Rice. "Do you think you can solve me with these guys? If you were still young, I would definitely expand the number of people to 10 times the current number. As for now..." Dr. Rice was just halfway through his words, and after seeing Logan's face clearly, his expression suddenly froze. "Wait, your face. How come? How did you become younger?" He noticed that Logan now looked at least 10 years younger, with fewer wrinkles and white hair than in the photos he had seen before. Logan chuckled. "Why, are you surprised? If it weren't for your genetically modified food, I could even be younger." "That's impossible." Les's eyes suddenly sank. "Your X gene has long been weakened, and it's impossible to get younger." Logan squinted his eyes, raised his steel claws, and said jokingly, "Maybe my ability has evolved. Those genetically modified foods may have no effect on me anymore." Les was stunned, and then reacted, and greed suddenly appeared on his face. "Logan, you are really a treasure. Even if you are old, you can create all kinds of possibilities. Your genes are still fascinating." As he said, he glanced at Victor and said again, "You and Laura go back with us. I will let others go, including those little guys in your so-called Garden of Eden." Obtaining Logan's genes and exploring the secrets of X-gene evolution are more valuable than other things. You know, he participated in the research and development of genetically modified foods, so he naturally knew how strong those things were against X genes. Logan's X gene can still complete autonomous evolution under such suppression, which is simply a miracle in biology. Don't even think about it. Victor stood in front of Logan and stared at Les. No one will leave with you tonight. After that, he turned his head and whispered to Logan, I will hold them back later. You take Laura away, this time, let me protect you. Victor's words made Logan's heart pass through a warm current, and then he smiled and said, no, we can leave together. Victor was stunned, turned his head to look at Logan, saw the confidence on his face, and was a little puzzled. 1x24, more than 60 soldiers, they are now unable to resist. Listen to my news later, squat down if I tell you to squat down. Logan pressed Laura's head with one hand and patted Victor's shoulder with the other hand. What? Victor was stunned, and then saw the red light gradually flashing in Logan's eyes. In this scarlet look, he felt a strong sense of danger, that is the taste of death. Squat down. Logan suddenly burst out, and pressed Victor's shoulder down heavily with his palm. Hearing this sound, Dr. Rice suddenly felt something was wrong. The next second, a red heat beam burst out in the dark forest, and the intense heat spread. The surrounding grass withered instantly, and the moisture in the air evaporated, and the mist rose. Swish. Two red beams illuminated the entire forest, sweeping the surrounding enemies mercilessly. Chapter 59 The Death of Les, a Poor Man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Boom. The thermal vision swept out, and the red beam was extremely dazzling in the forest. Dr. Rice stared at the two beams of light, and a fear from the depths of his soul spread in his heart. Damn it, squat down, he roared fiercely, and quickly hugged his head and lay on the ground. The beam almost passed by his scalp, and a tuft of hair on the top of his head was instantly scorched. Puff. The mercenaries around him suffered. They failed to react in the first time, and the beam cut them in the waist. The heavy bulletproof steel plate on the chest could not stop the attack of the thermal vision at all. It was cut neatly in just one encounter, and the huge body of the mercenary was directly penetrated. The burning pain in the waist made them want to run away, but they found that their lower limbs had no sensation at all, and their upper body fell straight down and broke into two pieces in an instant. Fuck. Oh my god. Shoot quickly. Bang bang bang. With a sweep, more than a dozen people were cut in half in an instant, and the gushing blood poured into the forest like rain. The other mercenaries looked at this tragic scene and were completely panicked. The fear in their hearts drove them to raise their guns and shoot subconsciously, and the dense gunshots echoed fiercely in the deep forest. All the crazy bullets fell on Logan, and his clothes were instantly torn. One by one, blood holes from the muzzles exploded on his body, and blood beads splashed up. The intense pain made his facial muscles tremble uncontrollably, but the hot vision did not stop. He gritted his teeth, resisted the pain of being hit by bullets, and continued to spray hot vision. The red light was particularly dazzling in the darkness, like two violent fire dragons, rampaging in the forest. Not only the mercenaries, but also the surrounding trees were cut in half. One after another, the towering trees collapsed continuously, and the broken ends were smooth and flat. At the same time, due to the intense high temperature, blazing flames burned, and a sea of fire spread. The mercenaries fell down in rows, their bodies were ruthlessly penetrated, cut in half, and blood splashed in the firelight, like a bunch of gorgeous red flowers blooming. Ah! The screams resounded throughout the forest, and the fear of dying made all the mercenaries sing the swan song of life. Fuck! Victor squatted on the ground. The scorching heat above his head made him feel as if his head was burning, and the two red fire dragons were like the sickle of the god of death, easily harvesting one life after another. He looked up at Logan, and the shock in his eyes was hard to describe. He never thought that Logan would awaken a new ability, and it was such a terrifying ability, which was far beyond his cognition. Roar! As all the mercenaries fell to the ground, an angry roar suddenly came. In the dark night, X-24's eyes were red, and a pair of steel claws were cold and narrow, and he ran towards Logan angrily. Logan turned around without hesitation, his eyes focused on him, and the dazzling fire dragon rushed towards X-24 without hesitation. Looking at the flying fire dragon, X-24 obviously smelled a strong danger. The high temperature on his face made him stop subconsciously, and his two steel claws crossed and blocked in front of him. Swish! The violent heat sight bombarded the steel claws, unable to penetrate at the first time, but X-24 was also suppressed by this force and could not move forward at all. Logan's eyes were focused, and the terrifying high temperature of the heat sight rose again. The silver-white steel claws were instantly burned red by the scorching temperature, and the scorching heat directly made X-24's clothes burst with a sound, and they spontaneously ignited without fire. Roar! That the burning pain on his body made X-24 burst into the most primitive beastly roar, like the desperate roar of a burning fireman, and the red claws finally couldn't hold on and were heavily bounced off. The thermal sight instantly pierced through the abdomen of X-24 like a spear, and a blood hole as big as a bowl appeared, and blood kept dripping in the blood hole. Bang! X-24 fell heavily to the ground, but did not die directly. The self-healing factor maintained his last vitality. He rolled on the ground in pain, extinguished the flames, and groaned in pain. Hoochie! The red light faded, and the breeze at night swept through, blowing away the sultry heat. The air was filled with the smell of blood. A group of crows flew in and circled in the sky. The body fragments on the ground were steaming, and the blood stains covered the entire forest. Looking over, it was a disgusting and tragic scene. At this time, Dr. Rice no longer had any arrogance. He curled up on the ground with his hands holding his head. The broken meat and blood on the mercenary's body completely dyed his white coat red. The fear in his heart made him tremble uncontrollably. He stared at Logan, who was walking towards him with big strides, and was so scared that he almost fainted. The shadow of death was infinitely magnified in his heart. Logan walked in front of Rice, stretched out his hand without hesitation, grabbed his collar, and lifted it up heavily, staring at him with a cold gaze. But to his surprise, Dr. Rice did not beg for mercy. Although the fear of death made his body tremble uncontrollably, he still stared at Logan stubbornly. "You, the devil, are simply an uncivilized beast. Don't worry, you will go to hell. Satan will come to claim your life in person. I will wait for you in hell, together with Satan, waiting for your arrival. I will eat you piece by piece in hell." That he spoke to Logan almost crazily, as if he had changed from a biologist to a theologian who was loyal to the devil, and used words to curse Logan the most viciously. Logan knew very well why the other party hated him so much. When Wolverine was in laboratory, and will never beg for mercy from the enemy who killed his father. If he wasn't an enemy, Logan would admire this guy's courage. A seemingly weak biologist, even when he was about to die, could still burst out with courage that ordinary people could not match. But admiration is admiration, and Logan will not let him go, not only because this guy is chasing him, but also because of those innocent mutants and experimental subjects. This guy has too much innocent blood on his hands. Logan clenched his fist and pressed it against Les's chest, directly facing his heart. Listening to his trembling curses, he snorted coldly, "Go and reunite with your incompetent father, you are even more incompetent than him." That the sound fell and the steel claw popped out. Click! The sharp claws instantly pierced his heart and penetrated his whole body, causing blood to spurt out. Logan threw him down, and Les died with a cry of pain. Laura grabbed Logan's trousers with one hand and stared at Les's body with fierce eyes. Logan put his arms around her and said softly, "Let's go. He can't hurt you anymore." Laura nodded, stretched out her hand and held Logan's finger. Looking at the heartwarming scene in the sea of blood, Victor couldn't help but smile and said, "You really have a deep love between father and daughter." Cough, cough, cough. They had just taken a few steps when a cough suddenly sounded. Several people looked sideways and saw X-24 lying on the ground. He was lying on the ground, his skin was scorched black by the flames, blood was constantly flowing from the penetrating wound in his abdomen, and the self-healing factor was holding him to his last breath. Logan walked over and looked down at him. The face that looked exactly like his own when he was young always made him feel like he was looking into a mirror across time and space, but there was no humanity in the other person's eyes, only the most primitive animality, like a real wild wolf. Logan squatted down and stabbed the opponent's heart with his steel claws. causing a circle and completely disrupting the heart. Even if he had a self-healing factor, it would be impossible for such an injury to heal. In the splatter of blood, X-24's violent eyes gradually lost their sparkle and anger. Instead, feeling more like relief, Logan reached out and gently brushed his face, closed his eyes, sighed and shook his head. Poor man. After saying that, he got up and took Laura, led Victor to find Charles and Caliban, got back in the car and continued on their way. As for the corpses in that place, Logan believed that by the time others discovered them, they would have already left far away. Chapter 60, Reunion at the Border. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Late at night, the car shuttled through the woods. The quiet woods were awakened by the bright headlights, and the forest birds fluttered and took off. Logan sat in the middle of the back seat. Charles on the left leaned his head against the window and fell asleep. Laura on the right rested her head on Logan's arm and also fell asleep. There was silence in the carriage. Without any sound, Logan also closed his eyes and leaned back on the soft chair, but he did not fall asleep. The data panel flashed in front of his eyes. After the battle just now, the prestige value has increased a lot, and now it has risen to 60 points. This had to make Logan sigh once again. It was indeed much easier to gain prestige points from his own race. Although 60 points of prestige is not enough for him to awaken new abilities, Logan feels that it is not too far off. The last time he awakened his heat vision, his prestige value exceeded the 10-point threshold. Even though he didn't know the specific values of these thresholds, he could vaguely feel that the required prestige points should not be too much. Moreover, he is about to go to a gathering place for mutants. There are many mutants there. As long as he gains prestige from them, it will only be a matter of time before he awakens to new skills. Looking back from the prestige column, Logan looked at the free points and enhancement points again. This time, the 2 points have also increased a lot. The free points currently have 6 points, while the enhancement points have 4 points. Without any hesitation, Logan directly added all 4 enhancement points to the self-healing factor. As the self-healing factor increased, Logan faintly noticed that the injuries on his body suddenly became much lighter. When dealing with the pursuit of Dr. Rice's group of mercenaries just now, he had to bear a lot of bullets. Although the wounds had initially healed, the stinging pain of tearing was still a bit unbearable. But now, as the points increase, a feeling of pleasure suddenly comes up and down the body, and the heart-wrenching pain finally slows down. This made him couldn't help but let out a long breath and slowly opened his eyes full of joy. This battle was well fought. Not only did it solve the big problem of Dr. Rice, but it also allowed various points to be replenished to a certain extent. It was indeed killing 2 birds with 1 stone. After suppressing the joy in his heart for a moment, Logan set his sights on the final freedom point. After some hesitation, Logan decided to continue collecting the freedom points. This thing is a good choice for emergency use. It is better not to mobilize it easily unless necessary. If there are still strong enemies, these points may be able to give unexpected effects and even turn the situation around. Logan put away the panel and glanced at the still dark sky, just about to close his eyes and take a rest, but I found that the little head on the right shoulder moved. Laura didn't know when she woke up, staring at herself with a pair of watery eyes. Logan showed his little face, reached out and rubbed the girl's head, and said softly, "Sleep a little longer, you can see your friend when you wake up." Hearing the word friend, Laura didn't feel too much happiness in her eyes. She just nodded and reached out to touch Logan's body. She could feel that there was a lot hidden under this newly put on clothes. Bullet holes that haven't completely healed yet. "It's okay, it'll be fine in 2 days." Logan comforted the girl softly, telling her not to worry about herself. Laura nodded silently and retracted her palm, with some distress still shining in her eyes. Logan chuckled and continued to rub the girl's hair. "Rest, as long as we cross the border, we can be peaceful for a while." After saying that, he breathed a deep sigh of relief and turned to look out the window at the deep woods passing by. Once outside the border, the U.S. government's coercion on them can be greatly reduced. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers cannot cross the border to arrest themselves at will. At that time, he would be able to relax a little more. Just as Logan was thinking, a childish voice suddenly sounded in his ears, "Logan." Logan turned around suddenly, looked down at Laura's delicate face, and asked in disbelief, "Did you just speak?" He was sure that he was not hallucinating. There was indeed a young voice calling his name softly just now, and in the entire carriage, Laura was the only one who could make such a sound. Laura nodded, once again confirming the fact that she could speak. Logan's eyes widened, a little unbelievable. Laura was finally willing to speak. He knew that the girl was a little autistic and was usually silent towards outsiders, even in front of outsiders. When Gabriella left before, she just waved her hand. What happened in the back seat was also heard by Caliban in the passenger seat. He turned around suddenly and stared at Laura in astonishment. You can actually talk. That he thought there was something wrong with Laura's voice. After all, clones would have some physical problems. For example, X-24 was a wild wolf with low intelligence and developed animalistic nature, but now that he heard Laura speak, he instantly felt like he had been cheated. Laura ignored Caliban, but still stared at Logan, put her arms around him, put her head on his chest, and whispered, "Thank you." Logan was stunned, knowing that the girl was thanking him for protecting her along the way. He smiled and rubbed Laura's hair. "Don't be polite to me, I promised you and Gabriella that I will take you to the Garden of Eden." Lola suddenly raised her head, staring at her big watery eyes, and asked worriedly, "Will you leave?" That she knew that the destination this time was just a rendezvous point. When the time came, she would cross the border with other friends and rush to the Garden of Eden in Canada. If Logan only sent her to the rendezvous point according to the agreement with Gabriella, Logan's mission would be completed, and he would part ways with her at that time, but she was a little afraid of being separated from Logan after accompanying him all the way. For some reason, she was already full of dependence on this father who she had only known for a few days. "You don't want me to leave?" Logan saw the panic in the girl's eyes. Lola nodded seriously. "I hope you can accompany me." Logan chuckled and nodded seriously. "Don't worry, I will always protect you." He rubbed the girl's hair soothingly, getting the promise. Lola finally smiled, leaned on Logan's arm, and closed her eyes at ease. The car drove from the dark night to the early morning, and then from the early morning to the evening. After running all the way, the vehicle drove out of the forest and stopped in front of a Gobi desert. "We are here, right here." Victor untied the car and turned off the engine. The Gobi Desert outside the window was the location on the coordinates. Logan pulled Laura's hand and got out of the car. Looking at the deserted Gobi Desert, he didn't see a single person, so he lowered his head and asked, "Do you know where they are?" "It should be nearby." Laura carried her small school bag, put her palm on her forehead, and looked around. Caliban, who was fully armed to block the sun, sniffed and pointed to the top of a cliff in the Gobi Desert. "It should be there." His ability is to search for mutants. As long as there are mutants alive nearby, he can accurately find their location. Several people looked in the direction pointed by Caliban, and saw a watchtower standing on the top of the cliff. They could faintly see a few figures on the watchtower looking down at this side. After a while, a very simple wooden platform on the edge of the cliff was lowered by a manpower crane, and a girl stood on the platform. Laura saw the girl clearly and ran over excitedly. "Rebecca." "Laura, it's really you." Rebecca jumped down from the platform and hugged Laura with a look of surprise. "It seems that our mission is completed." Logan smiled at their reunion and lit a cigarette with relief. The smoke floated in the night and was blown away by the wind in a moment.